Welcome everyone to the Wednesday board meeting, or March board meeting of Ignite CDA. I'll get it right. It's on Wednesday. So if you'd all rise and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's time for public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make that motion to approve the consent calendar, the approval of the board meeting minutes for February 15th, approval of the payables as submitted, and approval of the district monthly financial statements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Did you hear my aye?
And then, who's all on the Zoom call?
This is Brad. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, good.
And this is Steve Whitmire.
Okay.
Mr. English said Commissioner English said he was going to also join, but apparently he's not on yet.
Not there yet. So
Okay.
next up is the Executive Director's Report. Tony?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple items for you. First off, Jeff, if I could get my PDF up there. Thank you, sir. I bring forward to you tonight a recommendation for the award for areas 9, 16, 17, 18, and 19, located on the Atlas Mill Site project. Just to refresh everybody's memory, we have a proposal review and scoring committee that is comprised of the folks you see on the screen there. We have Christy Wood from the City of Coeur d'Alene, myself, Brendan Mandel from Ignite, Ben Wharton from Heartland, Phil Boyd from Welch Comer, Troy Thomason from the city, Hillary Patterson from the city, Matt Anderson from Heartland, Danielle Quaid from Ignite, and Olivia Metz from Ignite. So this team met to chat about these areas, and they are depicted on the screen. This is an aerial shot of where areas 9, 16, 17, 18, or 19 are located. This also is a graphic kind of looking straight down on those areas. These areas 9, 16, and 17 were kind of designated for single-family detached residents, and 18 and 19 we were looking for a preferred use of townhomes. So just to kind of give you a background on the proposal metrics, I'll just read this. Proposals must include all single-family areas 9, 16, and 17, or all townhome areas 18 and 19, or all of both types. Developers cannot propose on individual areas. Developers can propose alternate configurations or product types within the confines of the development standards, with higher density concepts preferred on areas 18 and 19. Any replatting would be required of the developer. So we had 3 proposals received. We had a proposal from the SMOC development team. They bid on all areas contained in the RFP. Areas 9, 16, and 17, they were looking at 18 single-family residents. Areas 18 and 19, 10 twin homes. They bid on areas 9, 16, and 17 up to $2.7 million with escalation, and on areas 18 and 19 up to $1.9 million with escalation. Their base bid, though, was $3.37 million. Toll Brothers also bid on all areas. They were going to put 16 single-family residents on areas 9, 16, and 17, and 40 townhomes on 18 and 19. Their base bid was $3.2 million. We had a third development team submit, the Butler Stam development team. They bid only on areas 9 and 16 in the RFP. Their bid was $900,000 up to $1.4 million. This proposal was deemed non-compliant for the RFP requirements because they only bid on 2 of the areas and they did not follow the requirements of the RFP. So the team did not consider this as a compliant proposal. We just kind of show you a few of the graphics of the concept depictions that the SMOC team provided, what their designs would look like. And we also received some representative concepts from the Toll Brothers development team. Their townhomes, depiction there. So using information that we got from both the SMOC and Toll Brothers development teams, mainly anticipated development timeframes, we ran a financial comparison to kind of really look at what these proposals offered to the agency, including purchase price, additional Ignite CDA required site improvement costs, and estimated tax increment revenue projected to be realized over the life of the Atlas District. The table below here, and I'll give credit to Phil Boyd and Welch Comer for producing this analysis. We kind of looked at the product count they were going to provide and also the phasing in time of completion in years. And we weighed it into a financial analysis that looked at the tax increment yield over the life of the district. Because we did this because of the issue of, on areas in 19 specifically, where there was quite a bit more density provided in the toll proposal versus the SMOC proposal, and we wanted to kind of really look at a quantitative analysis of what that meant for the agency. So when it was all said and done, and looking at the different costs associated to the agency for additional earthwork, the analysis showed that the toll proposal would yield the agency about $1.5 million more over time than the SMOC proposal would. So given that, the team used a scoring matrix that we typically use to score these proposals up to 200 points. And the results were the SMOC development team for areas 9, 16, and 17 received 188 points, and the Toll Brothers for those same areas received 190. For areas 18 and 19, the SMOC team received 161 points, and the Toll Brothers 192. So given those scores and the result of the analysis, the committee recommends to the board that areas 19, 16, 17, 18, and 9, 16, 17, 18, and 19 be awarded to Toll Brothers development team. And Commissioner Mandel, if you want to add anything additionally to that for the board?
No, I mean, I would just like to thank Heartland and Welch Comer for their continued support in getting us all the information and the back and forth with the applicants. I think, Tony, you summarized it well. There's always sort of the quantitative aspect and the qualitative aspect about the proposals themselves and our objectives in terms of density and increment. So I think you captured it well. Happy to answer any questions from other commissioners.
No, I think the Finance Committee did a really good job.
Yeah, the Atlas RFP committee did an excellent job in digging deep and ferreting it out. It's nice.
Yeah.
So at this time, I would look to the board for a motion if they want to accept the committee's recommendation for the award.
I will make a motion that we accept the committee's proposal for the response to RFPs for areas, RFP number 8 for areas 9, 16, 17, 18, and 19 to be awarded to the Toll Brothers.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Brad.
Go ahead, Brad.
I don't know how extensive of conversation you have with Toll Brothers, but do you have confidence that they'll perform at closing this time?
That's a great question, Commissioner Jordan. We did have that conversation. We did have a issue the last time we worked with Toll on these areas, but we are as confident as we can be that they're going to perform. The offer price is much lower than the last go-around we had with them for these areas. Phil and his team have had conversations with the principals at Toll, and we're confident that they are serious about moving forward. So we are optimistic that this will happen, but we would enter into the A&E process, the agreement to negotiate exclusively for 90 days to get and work through all the due diligence issues. And if something were to come up that would surprise us, we will let you know.
Okay.
Great question, Brad. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Thank you all. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next on the agenda is areas 5B and 8 DDA phasing plan modification. So I bring this forward to you regarding the Riverfest LLC development team, which I'll refer to as the developer. They have failed to adhere to their agreed to development and disposition agreement. construction phasing plans for 5B and 8. There's an economic impact to the agency if development teams do not adhere to their phasing plans in the DDA. So we had an initial overture from the agency to the developer, and we were trying to seek some feedback as to how they propose to get back on track. Their response was a phasing plan that extended their construction completion date by 4 years. The agency felt that this extension time was unacceptable, and unless the developer is willing to compensate the agency for the financial opportunity costs associated with the time extension, that would not happen. So the agency wanted to be a good partner and kind of reached out to the developer and had a different proposal for them. The developer agreed to perform construction as contemplated by the DDA in essence, but in an attempt to strike a balance and see a successful development, the agency proposed 2 options that would eventually bring the developer's violations back in adherence with the DDA and the declaration related to their phasing plan. The first option is an alternative phasing plan that effectively grants an extension to the developer on the front end of the original phasing plan due to the developer's stated reasons for delay, and brings the phasing plan back to its original commencement and construction timing after such extension. This proposal effectively grants the developer an 11-month time extension on the original phasing plan at no cost to the developer. This proposal would represent an extension granted by the agency at no additional cost if construction is commenced and completed in accordance with its revised phasing plan. This proposal still represents a loss to projected tax increment revenue to the agency of about $102,000. Thus, if construction of all homes is not completed by the final date of October 1st, 2026, this extension fee in the amount of $102,580 would be immediately due and payable to the agency. So that would be the penalty that the developer would face if they do not get back on their phasing plan and complete construction by October of 2026. Option 2 was that for the agency to accept the developer's proposed phasing plan, in other words, extending out by 4 years, subject to the developer's payment of an extension fee representing the agency's loss in projected tax increment revenue from such an extension, which is about $1.2 million. This would be adequate. This would be an adequate remedy to make the agency whole for the exceedingly delayed development of areas 5B and 8. The developer, Riverfest LLC, has responded and chose to pursue option 1. So that's what we bring forward to you tonight. It would be a DDA amendment that we would work with the development team to extend their phasing plan out as recommended to October 2026 with that penalty pending if they do not meet that deadline. Be happy to answer any questions we have. We have Phil Boyd here. We have Danielle, who was on the team, to chat about this.
Danielle, what are your thoughts?
I think that this is a very reasonable approach. We considered a multitude of different options, including the penalties that are possible under the declaration. And ultimately what we want is for them to just come back into compliance with the timeline, and what we've offered them brings them to that original completion date. It pushes out the front end. But I feel like that's a reasonable place for them to end up, and it does cost the agency a little, but it's, it is a partnership and things, we have been dealing with a difficult marketplace, et cetera. So that seems like a reasonable option to me, and then they're motivated to stay on track from here on out.
Chairman, I just have a question. Does this set a bad precedent, though, for other developers, saying we should be entitled to the same thing if they need it? Would we offer the same thing? Or is there no penalty for delays, repeated delays?
We definitely have discussed that we want to treat everybody the same. So we're looking at, we will look at all developers the same way and try and keep them on track to the best of our ability. Depending on the individual circumstances, I think we would decide how to modify from this approach. I don't necessarily think it causes a bad precedent. I mean, we have definitely given each and every developer some room to move in their own project. So I feel like we've treated people fairly.
The Butler letter did state that there was a renegotiation at the end of the 4-year term on the $102,000. Is that correct? That if they don't finish on time, there's still room for negotiation?
So that was what the Butlers asked for. In our response to them, we told them that we were not going to commit to that. That, obviously at the time that a penalty was due, they're welcome to come to the board and make any proposal that they want to make, but we were not going to commit to on the front end a later negotiation for that. So we stood our ground on that as we understand it right now, and as we're offering, the penalty would be as we offered. And obviously they're allowed to show up and ask you guys for some sort of a variance from that at a later time.
One last question, and that's just on the 1.2 million lost revenue, the 1.219. Is that something that's ever recoverable, or is that just lost because of the delay?
So that would be if we went with the timeline that the Butlers suggested and offered. So if we get them back onto the timeline that we've offered to them for the waiver of the 102, that is what the cost is. There would never be that $1.2 million cost.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We're looking for an approval then for the extension.
Yeah, the motion would be for an amendment to the DDA based on this option 1 parameters that we discussed.
I'll make a motion for the amendment of the DDA for areas 5B and 8 as suggested.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Questions? Concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thanks. Motion carries.
And
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up, I'd like to invite Phil Boyd from Welch Comer Engineers to share an Atlas project update with the board.
Thank you, Tony, Commissioner Austin, Commissioners.
Welcome, Phil.
Let's see, it's a short update today, so it's just an update. There's nothing else. So on the status of 2B, and you just heard a little bit about it on the Toll Brothers. We're waiting for confirmation out of Toll Brothers on exactly how they want the utilities on the north side of the road. So we've delayed the contractor, and again, this is one of the benefits of having a positive working relationship with the contractors. They were willing to pause because they were forging ahead, and there's been good windows of weather that they wanted to put these utilities in, but we really wanted to pause to make sure that what we extended into these north lots would fit for Toll Brothers. So that work will start up on the 27th. We're modifying a little bit. We need to submit the plans into the city, get the city's approval of them. And then we anticipate La Riviere will start doing that utility work on the 27th. Just some other little progress work. If you were to go out there now, you would see contractors working on a few things. One of the things that I don't know that I've highlighted much of is these little stormwater treatment systems. And so I thought this was an opportunity to point it out. This is actually construction work at the end of Jammer Lane. So this is they're called R tanks, and then they have a special soil material on the top of them called focal point. And this is how it's shown in the plan. And the way that they're constructed is these get, you obviously excavate a hole in these tanks. These R tanks essentially treated stormwater once it's moved through the soil, and allows you to more efficiently construct the surface component of stormwater. And what that means, if you're the master developer, which is you guys, is you have a certain amount of real estate. And traditionally, like when you go into a lot of subdivisions, you'll see that the stormwater treatment is on the side of the road in the form of swales, relatively wide. There's a depression. It's got a bunch of mowable grass in it, and that's where the stormwater goes. And when you have real estate that is relatively inexpensive compared to this real estate, which was very expensive to purchase, the city paid a very high price for it. When we did the financial feasibility study, we needed to figure out how to put a high enough density in there in order to generate revenue that would reimburse Ignite for its development costs and the city potentially for their purchase costs. So to create that density, we needed all the land we could get.
including where you would normally put stormwater treatment. So we started pursuing this idea of using these R tanks and focal point. And so the way that it works is stormwater comes down the street, gets into these areas here, it infiltrates very quickly, it becomes treated, and then it's stored in these underground egg crates, and then it slowly infiltrates into the soil. And the benefit of that is you don't have swales, and so this picture on the bottom right here, you'll see there's no stormwater swale on the edge of the road. The distance between the face of the curb and the face of the walk is smaller, which means you can put more lots in, which you have more real estate to sell. So I had these pictures when I was going through the construction, and I thought it would be a good time to show the board that there's a little bit of a unique element that may not be completely apparent to you when you go out there and look at it. One of the other benefits is it allows you a lot more flexibility of what you plant along the road edges. And so when you get out there, you'll see there's bushes and things that you normally would not put in a roadside planting area because they won't grow in overly saturated ground conditions. So any questions on that? Or?
I have a quick question.
How many
Mr.
are being
Chairman.
installed?
Oh, that's a good question.
Hey, are they every residence or?
No, they're, so for instance, Commissioner Chapkus, this one right down here takes about, it takes half of Lumber Lane. So next time you drive out between Veneer Road and Hartwood on Lumber Lane, half of that roadway goes into that one swale. When we were doing the economic analysis of this, and we worked through this with Tony at a pretty granular level, when we were doing the economic analysis of these, because these are more expensive to build, just in this one example, we would have sacrificed a lot, so one lot. And you're, well, what's the big deal for one lot? Well, one lot in Atlas is worth a lot of money. And it very quickly became apparent that even the incremental cost for these, we were able to pay for these and come out ahead from a financial standpoint on the projected value of the sales in 2018-19. And we all know what the real estate has done since then as it's gone up. So it's from our perspective, it's been a very economical solution. There's more maintenance with them in the long term. The city doesn't maintain stormwater swales, and we're writing an O&M manual for the HOA how to take care of them properly so they live a
Seems
long
like a great
life.
technology. It
Yeah.
really does, and it will make a lot more space available when adopted everywhere,
Yep.
you know. It's nice, clever.
No grassy swales to maintain.
Yeah, there's still the roadside mowing to do, but these are roadside mowing in dry conditions is easier than roadside mowing in wet swale conditions.
So, Bill, can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, okay, thanks. So, Phil, so the normal way this is done, there's a pond and then a dry well. And if there's a big thunderstorm, the overflow of the pond can't handle it, goes down in the dry well and dissipates. So you're saying you don't need to have a pond now with this system?
Correct.
Swale, I mean, I shouldn't say pond, maybe a swale. And I don't mean the swale along the street, I mean they put swales in all kinds of places, but are you saying this replaces that? You don't even have to have a swale, it all just goes straight into this device?
Yep, that's correct. And the reason for that, Commissioner Jordan, is because the infiltration rate through this specialized soil material that goes in the top in this area here has such a high infiltration rate. The other thing that's a little bit, not to get too nerdy on the whole thing, but grassy swales have a challenging track record for contaminant removal. It depends on a whole bunch of stuff. And there's not a lot of great evidence how effective they are. This is actually an engineered product that you're buying this, and they've done a bunch of test data on it, and it has much better removal and more consistent removal characteristics. So one of the other features of this is you're reducing the size of the stormwater treatment system, how much real estate you need. You get better treatment of the stormwater in a smaller footprint. It does cost a little bit more to build that, but the real estate is so darn valuable here, the trade-off is worth it. And then the long-term maintenance is also more, but there's enough density here that we think it can support that.
So we don't have a swale above it like they usually do. You know, a swale that overflows into a dry well. We don't have the swale.
Correct.
It's all level, and then this can handle a thunderstorm or whatever and
Yes.
take the water. Okay.
Yeah, if there were ponding, you can kind of see it here, Commissioner Jordan. There's this port that comes up here, and when you go down there, we call them a beehive grate that sits on the top of this port. And so if for some reason the soil is blinded off by frozen ground, for instance, if the ground is overly frozen and you get a Chinook with a rain on snow event and a big runoff in that case, and it won't infiltrate through that rock material, it will pool up and then spill into this, and then it gets stored in these egg crates, if you will, these R tanks down below. And those R tanks are all specifically sized based on the drainage basin they serve. So you'll go out there and you'll see some of them are very big and some of them are smaller.
Okay, so it's still kind of the same principle, like the swale with the dry well that sets up a few inches and the overflow goes into it if the soil's frozen or it can't handle the drainage from a storm or something.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a much higher tech version of the dry well. Is that?
That's true, and then the soil, the engineered soil is different. Typically with a swell, you use just native soil material, and this actually has a engineered soil, which is very expensive. So you're very careful. It shows up in totes, and we're always making sure the contractor isn't losing any of it.
And what do you call it?
It's the soil material is called focal point, and then these tanks down here are called R tanks.
R tank. Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't have to be torn out in 10 years or something, it sounds like a good deal.
Yeah,
What was the name of the tanks again?
they're called R tanks.
R tanks.
Just R-tanks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay. Just a couple other status reports. Our favorite rock wall is still underway, but should be finished by the end of the week.
Coming along.
Amen. It's just been a long haul to get it done. I put this shot in here, it just shows an example. This is actually headed up Veneer Road, and you can see the houses will be up in here. This is a section that wouldn't be built. And then this is looking across Area 15 up to the top there. A little update on the Atlas Entry Monument. The board might remember we originally had the monument just outside of this right-of-way line. So it was in the city right-of-way. As we started working through it with the city, their general feeling about signs in the right-of-way is they don't want them in the right-of-way. And so they said, will you please not put it in the right-of-way? Which, if we really felt like we wanted it to be in the right-of-way, we could have gone to the city council and asked the city council for an encroachment permit. I think it puts the city in a little bit of a predicament when they allow perhaps Ignite to put a sign in the right-of-way for their development, but they might let a private developer. So we, like Tony keeps telling us, we good partnerships and whatnot, and so we wanted to be a good partner here, so started evaluating another option. Could we push it into Area 10? The sign is going to stay the same size, but some of the decorative fencing that was going on each side, we think we're going to pull off because it has a little bit of a diminished value, I think. I don't know that we're getting a ton of value out of the amount of money we might spend on it because it's very expensive, if the board remembers this fancy decorative signing. And so we've pulled it back. We've established a temporary construction easement and a permanent construction easement. We've talked to the Area 10 folks, and they say, gosh, we're willing, to entertain it, send us the information. So this is just an update on the configuration of that. I know Commissioner English is always interested in the status of this, but there's quite a number of details to work through because there's a building sitting right there. And being able to construct this, there's a bunch of utilities in front of it as well. So it's just a little bit of a challenge to get it wedged in there. So Danielle's working on the easement draft for the DeChase Mixis folks, and then hopefully that project will advance forward, and we'll see that coming out of the ground here in late spring, early summer.
Excellent.
That's it. Hopefully that was short enough. unless there's any other questions.
Perfect. Any questions for Phil?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Tony. Next up is the approval of the updated employee personnel policy. And just to remind everybody, I think it was August or so when we're going through Tony's performance evaluation and stuff, we noticed that there were some inconsistencies with the way the policy was written and the things we wanted to do with his COLA increase that he's supposed to get. And so Olivia and I sat down with Danielle and kind of went through, and Danielle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we, as Chairman Hoskins indicated, the chairman and vice chair Metz and I met, and we kind of walked through this policy. And then I also had one of our employment attorneys at the firm take a look at it. We made very minimal changes, other than you'll see the changes in section 4 related to compensation. It had been the board's kind of understanding and intent that the executive director's annual increase for cost of living would be tied to the city, but the way that the language was in the policy, it didn't allow us to track with the city's COLA, especially in the inflationary times that we are seeing right now. So we cleaned up that language so it will track with the administrative COLA for city employees. We also added the possibility of a bonus. I think we could have, we were well within our authority to give a bonus without that being included, but it's more clear, I think, to have it included. We cleaned up some just, like old terminology, like a reference to MySpace. I don't think any of us have MySpace accounts anymore. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you have about the policy, and also Commissioners Hoskins and Metz probably could as well.
Well done.
Any questions? We just need a motion to approve, then the amended, updated.
I'll make a motion to approve the updated agency employee personal rules document.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up is a time for board commissioner comments. Any comments from a board commissioner?
I guess, Mr. Chair, I do want to just thank legal counsel for their judicious and thoughtful addressing of the situation with the developers in areas 5B and in 8. It's really refreshing to have legal counsel who's very supportive of the mission of the agency and trying to make sure that we stand by our principles as we move forward. So that's I'm always pleased to see how our legal counsel embraces our theme of working with the community and working with our partners. And that's, I just want to say, I know we pay her to do that, but I still appreciate it.
No, that's true.
Thank you. That's really nice.
Awesome. Anything else? Anything from the people on the Zoom call?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm good, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned, and Jeff, that's a wrap.